All right, make sure you have the recording. What's up, everybody, and welcome to Soft Tissue Practice Revolution, the podcast. My name is Dr. Matt Maggio, and my mission is to help practitioners that specialize in soft tissue treatments and how to significantly grow their skill set, their business, make more money, and scale their practice, all while being ethical and not scamming patients and ripping them off. Still trying to learn that mission in that intro, but way better than the first episode. We're already on episode 2. Wrote it on the whiteboard back there. And the hashtag on there, End Pain Pills Movement. I talked about this on the very first podcast, and I kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. I'm a coffee addict, and I love it. Talked about this on the very first episode towards the end there, and got into the idea of why I started the End Pain Pills movement, because of my dad. Today's a Saturday, and I'm sorry if I get a little emotional, because it's still really hard for me when I talk about this and what happened. This Saturday, on Saturdays, one thing that my dad always liked to do was we go on the car wash and wash the car and clean it. And today I took my truck down there and did that, and got a little emotional when I was doing it, because it just reminded me of when I was a kid and that time spent with my dad and the process and all that, and just really made me miss him. And I miss him every day, and I think about him every day, and I think about his last days. So this is episode 2 of the podcast, and this one's going to be probably my most emotional one, because it's real and it hits me hard. My dad was murdered by the orthopedic model. And some people might look at me and say, Matt, that's being a little harsh, don't you think? No, I will stop you right there. The orthopedic surgeons, the pharmaceuticals, and the medical device companies killed my father. My dad died in October of 2016 of a pain pill overdose. And it was pretty much the worst day of my entire life. And I haven't had a day in my life where I haven't thought about it. And it's driven me. It eats at me. And it gives me a purpose. And it gives me a mission. And I know my dad left me with that gift to have me have this fire breathing inside, to know that we're going to take on these fuckers. These are our enemy. And people don't realize it all the time. We fight amongst ourselves as chiropractors, as physical therapists, as massage therapists. Meanwhile, we have these orthopedic conglomerates, these huge, I call them cartels, of people that are just pumping people full of pain pills, injections, surgeries they don't need, all to make a fucking quick buck. And people are dying and they're suffering every day. And they are stuck, not getting answers, not getting what they need, because they're getting lied to. So people can make more money, so they can have a bigger boat, a bigger car, a bigger house, all that. I'm all about making money and having luxuries in life, but you need to do it fucking ethically. And you don't need it to do it to kill people. And that's what they're doing all day long. Whew, a little fired up there. So I want to talk about my dad's life up until he died. So my dad, Fred, was one of the healthiest men you'd ever meet in your life. He was a professional athlete, professional baseball player, one of the best referees in New York State ever. He worked out like a fiend. He could run marathons. He could lift weights. He could do everything. And he always took very good care of his body. And as he got a little older, probably I think this started happening in 2011. It was like right when I first got out of school. And I remember he came to me, and he was so proud of me because I had become a doctor, and he was just proud of me. And he was having some knee issues. He was having some mild knee pain, and it was starting to bug him a little bit, but he was still doing what he was doing. He was still refereeing. He was still being active, everything like that. And I didn't really know what I was doing when I got out in practice. I tried some ART stuff. I tried some treatment. I tried some things, but I didn't really know what was going on. And then I grew up in New York, and I made my way back down to Florida because I liked the warmer weather and I didn't want to pay taxes. But what happened over those years was I wasn't able to treat him anymore, and his problem kept getting progressively worse to the point where, he ended up tearing his meniscus, and they did his first surgery, a meniscal repair. That didn't work. They did a second one. That didn't work. Did more cortisone in his knee. Didn't work. Continued to get worse and worse. And then they did a knee replacement. That didn't work. More cortisone, more injections, more physical therapy, more cortisone, more injections. And they're like, well, you know what? Let's do a hip replacement. So they do a hip replacement. Still not any better. And he continued to deteriorate. He continued to lose his quality of life and who he was every year, more and more and more, until finally, then they got into his back. Hey, saw on MRI that there was a disc injury there. Let's get in there and do some work on his back. 2 back surgeries. So now we're 1, 2, 3 knee surgeries in, a hip replacement, and 2 back surgeries. And if you actually read the price tag on that, we're looking like somewhere near $500,000. It's a lot of fucking money. And I'm all about spending that money if he was going to be better and improve his quality of life. And all it did was diminish his quality of life. Now what happened was a guy who could do anything, was fucking Superman, got to the point where he couldn't even have a conversation with you without falling asleep. Because all he could do at that point was take pain pills for the pain. My dad never drank. He never took drugs. He always took care of himself. But it got so bad that he could only take pain pills just to get through the day. And all he wanted to do was lay on the couch. And then it got to the point where he needed a cane. He started losing his dignity. Then it got to a walker. And then it just got to the point where I even became embarrassed of what he had become. And I remember I went up to visit him one time, and we were sitting there talking about something, and I looked over, and it was the middle of the day, and he just fell asleep. He's 57 years old. He's acting like someone that was 95. And he just kept taking pain pills and continued to lose his grip on life and everything like that. So fast forward to that day in 2016. I remember I was getting ready for the day. I had a full load of patients, and my phone rang. I think it rang like around 10 a.m., and it was my uncle. And I'm like, why is my uncle calling me in the middle of the day? Something must be wrong. And I remember he got on the phone, and I could tell there was panic and worry in his voice. And he said, Matt, I don't want you to worry. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he goes, well, they found your dad this morning on the back porch, and he was unresponsive. And they think he has hypothermia, and they're rushing him to the hospital, but they're pretty sure he's brain dead. Yeah. Try to take all that in for a moment and think about how you feel. And I remember I just felt guilty. I felt bad. I hadn't talked to my dad in a while because every time I talked to him, I couldn't understand him. I couldn't carry on a conversation. I was embarrassed of him. And I just felt all this guilt. And I remember I just dropped the phone and went on the ground and just started crying. And just felt this emptiness inside. Was like, what am I going to do? So me being the problem solver that I am, I got my shit together, per se. Got my ass to the airport and flew up there. Luckily got a flight up there and had to take care of some business. And let me tell you what happened to my dad. So my dad had a lot of trouble sleeping, and it was a cold night, and he used to go and sit out on the back porch to watch the stars because he couldn't sleep. And what they think happened was he messed up his pain pill dosage, and it caused him to pass out. And he fell, and he hit down. And when he hit so violently that he bit completely through his tongue and fell face down. And he laid there on the cold porch on a cold night for another 6.5 hours before anyone found him. But my dad's a tough son of a bitch. He didn't die right away. He just laid there. And I struggle with this every day, and I'm like, I hope he didn't feel anything, but I know he did. And I just think of like how fucking awful that day must have been. Laying there, freezing. You bit through your tongue. No one coming to help because no one knew he was out there. So they found him. They rushed him to the hospital. My dad didn't have a DNR written down, so they kept keeping him alive. My dad coded 8 times that day. 8 times. And if you don't know what coding is, it's where you basically almost die and they resuscitate you and bring you back. So this had happened at 8 in the morning. By the time I got to New York, it was already 11 at night, and my uncle picked me up from the airport. And I had been keeping in contact all day of what was going on. And when I got off the plane and I saw him, I already knew what was going on just by the look on my uncle's face. Like, he looked like he saw a ghost, and it was awful. And I knew what I was going into. And I remember that drive to the hospital was like 45 minutes. And I drove because my uncle was too upset, and it was cold, and it was rainy, and it was a shitty night. And I just remember that was the longest drive of my life. And I got to the hospital, and I'm the guy in my family and my life and my business that just takes care of things. And I knew something bad was going to happen. And I walked in, and I walked right into my dad's room in the ICU and just watched him hooked up to all these machines, and he was bloated. I couldn't even recognize him, tubes, and he had blood coming out of his mouth. And all my family members were there crying, not knowing what to do. And I remember I looked at him, I surveyed the information. I kept my shit together because I can't show emotion because everyone else is upset. And I didn't want to show that weakness. I needed to be strong for the rest of my family. I looked at him for 2 minutes, walked out, went to the nurse's station, and I said, "Can I talk to the doctor?" Got an update of that, what was going on, talked to the doctor, and he's like, he's brain dead, and there's nothing that we can do. And I said, okay, well, I'd like to stop all care and pull him off life support. The doctor thanked me for doing that, and the nurse thanked me too, and she knew it wasn't an easy decision to make, but it's a decision you have to make. And I did it because he can't suffer anymore. He's already had the fucking worst day ever. Why keep it going? And that's a whole other tangent of like end of life stuff like that. But I made that decision, and I made it easy, and I don't regret that any day. So we took him off life support right away. And then we just waited. I asked some of my family members to leave. I asked my uncles to go home because it was their older brother, and they didn't need to be there for that. They'd already done it all. And I sat there, and I sat down next to him, and I just let it all out. I let him know how I felt and how sorry I was that I couldn't help him, and that he had that day and he had to suffer like that. And I was so sorry that people didn't take him off life support earlier, and that I was there to make sure that things were going to be taken care of. And I forgave him for how he'd been, and I hope he forgave me, and that I loved him. And I held his hand, and I watched him die. And when you watch somebody die that you love like that, it sucks. I don't know if any of you have been around someone as they're dying and you take them off life support. You just stare at the machine and you watch their heartbeat just go down, 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 down. And it finally got to 0. And that flat line came through. And that was it. He was gone. He wasn't coming back. I stood up. I kissed him on the forehead. Told him I loved him. And then I was sorry. And I walked out of the room, and I just took some laps around the hospital. And I remembered how I felt. And I sat down and I started thinking about it. And I'm like, why did this happen? This didn't have to happen. Why? He didn't deserve that. No one deserves to die like that. Nobody deserves to die like that. And I remember I sat down and I'm like, who's responsible for this? And I started making a list in my head. And I gave the usual suspects: insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, and the worst of all, the orthopedic surgeons. My dad did not need to have 7 surgeries. He didn't need to have any of those surgeries. But you know what? They got paid on those surgeries. And they kept going. And they took his entire life and his entire dignity away from him. And he died like that. And people are dying every day from this. And we sit here and we're all wondering why we're in this huge opioid epidemic. Why people are dying and going to heroin and doing all this when it's right in fucking front of us. It's the system. It's the medical system, the way it's designed. It is a profit-based system that is profiting off the lives of innocent people out there. You do the surgeries that get paid that don't work, and they're not better. And you know what? I'll get that person out there that goes, you know what? I had surgery and I'm great. Great, you're the fucking exception. And good for you. And I'm very happy that it worked for you. But there's so many people out there that are failing with surgeries every day. We have a code called failed back surgery. All these people are getting surgeries and they're getting paid for, and these doctors are getting richer and richer and richer. And like I said, I'm fine with you making money if you're doing something right and you're doing something ethical. But these doctors are not doing that. They're killing people. And they got to stop getting away with it. Now, I know there's good surgeons out there. I know there's good people, but there's a lot of bad eggs out there. There's a lot of bad people that are doing a lot of bad things just to make some money. And you know what? I hope there's a special place in hell for people like that. Now, that might come across as angry and frustrating, and I am. But I use that fire and that passion because I know that I can't take on big pharma by myself. I can't take on the insurance companies, and I can't take on the orthopedic and the medical device model. But you know what? If I can teach other doctors how to be really fucking good at their skill set, at their technique, at their treatment, at running a business, how to actually sell things correctly, ethically, and in the right way, we're going to create a groundswell of the best conservative doctors in the entire world. And we're going to make a dent in the pain pill epidemic. And we're going to make big fucking changes because I have to. Because I think about what happened to my dad every day, and I continue to think how much worse this is going to get. And somebody has to stand up and be a voice of reason and a voice of education for people. And that's what I'm becoming. Now, these first 2 episodes, they were long, but I need you to understand my story and my journey and where I've come because it'll make sense as we go. So I'm going to end the pain pills epidemic with the End Pain Pills movement. And I'm going to do it by exposing the problem to the rest of the world and having a solution of the best doctors, the best practitioners in the entire world, so we can take on that system and help people get better, avoid surgery, avoid drugs, avoid pain pills, and get their life and their quality of life better so we don't have to end up like my dad. Sorry for the emotions, it still hits me a lot, but I'm glad it does. I'm glad I feel that. I feel that darkness inside almost every day because it motivates me to make the changes that I need to change. So I hope you'll want to go on this journey with me. And if you do want to go on this journey with me, it's simple. Join my group. Follow me on Facebook. I'm in the link in the bio. It's I think it's Dr. Matt Maggio, or I'm also called the Soft Tissue Doctor on Facebook, and we have a private group, and you can join, and you're going to learn so much from us. I'm giving this all back out for free to the universe. I'm going to teach you how to diagnose better, how to treat better, how to sell better, how to market better, to do all these things so you can be a better version of yourself, so you can help people just like my dad avoid those circumstances from there. So we're going on a mission together. This is why it's called a revolution, because we're going to make big changes, and I hope you join me along this journey. Thanks.